Hi, good morning. Happy Friday to you. It's time for another edition of Catching Up with Tommy Mac here on 1010XL's podcast platform, 1010XL.com, the 1010XL app, live on Facebook, recorded inside the 1010XL podcast studios, and then shared all over the place, YouTube, social media, other platforms, Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. Wherever you want to listen and watch your favorite podcast, you can find Tommy Mac, Catching Up with Tommy Mac. Right there, brought to you by Team Tommy Mac. Of course, I got the Carpet Man flooring shirt on last night. You know, lately it's funny. Like, I haven't seen the commercial run in a while. I know it comes in and out. Chris does a great job with it. But recently, hey, you're the Carpet Man guy. I said, yes, I am. But they think I'm the owner. I'm like, I'm not. I'm not the owner. I'm just part of the commercial. But nonetheless, always great to represent Carpet Man Flooring. Check him out, carpetman.biz. He's over in Orange Park on Wells Road, and he's, of course, on St. John's Bluff, right near Craig Airfield at Atlantic and St. John's Bluff. Highest quality at the lowest prices. All types of flooring at Carpet Man Flooring. I'll talk about the rest a little bit later on. Like I said, pre-show with Facebook Live. I felt the cold coming on last night. I'm fighting it today, but I feel pretty good. Cranking on the vitamin C. I tell you, just eat those things like candy and the little tablets. But I got in bed and I watched most of the Gator game last night. Great, they took over. So when it was up by 15, 17, I was like, all right, I can now fully fall asleep. They're gritty, man. They're a gritty team. I wish I watched them more during the year. I just don't get into college hoop. Now, if it was Boston College, maybe I would, then I'd probably get into it. But I like watching these games because they're fun to watch. And I'm sorry I missed some of the good ones. I watched some highlights this morning on my phone, and that Arkansas game was unbelievable. Texas Tech the overtime, last second, phenomenal. All right, but we got a lot to get into with the draft. I want to talk about drafting this Mason Graham. My thoughts. I watched a little bit of his workout on TV. I'll give you on the video. I'll give you my thoughts on that. I want to talk about Trevor today a little bit. I want to talk about Trevor Lawrence. And, you just see a lot of people really, they go over the top out of their way to defend Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback. And we're just going to talk about it a little bit. And we'll get into some other news and notes. Before we do, though, let's welcome in Grammage. Grammage, good morning to you, my man. How you doing?
I feel very intangibly rich today.
Your voice is intangibly rich. You got it back.
Voice is getting there, probably about 90% back. Couple of good nights of shut eye.
Yep, that'll do it to you.
Some water in the system.
Yep.
Some warm drinks.
Yep.
Some throat soothers. We're almost back.
Don't you love the cold bed when you first get in and you just
it's the best.
It's just and I let out the every time.
It's the best, yeah. No, it's the best.
I don't know what it does, but it shocks the body. It just feels so good. And then when you flip the pillow over in the middle of the night and it's cold, and you're just like, so nice. I almost feel the steam coming off my head. You know what I mean?
Are you a back sleeper or a side sleeper?
Well, I'm a back sleeper till my wife hits me and so I can snore too loud. Then I try to be a side sleeper, but it hurts on both shoulders. So I toss and turn most of the night until that initial. I fall asleep before her, so I get a good deep sleep for a while, and then I'll go back to sleep. But I have to wait till she's back asleep till I can get back on the back, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But I never sleep on my stomach ever.
No.
That would always screw up my back when I was younger.
I don't know how people do that.
I don't know either.
That's
my wife
weird.
does it from time to time. She'll sleep on her stomach. But I'm mostly just flat on my back, just straight, or I got my arms crossed after I said my prayers and I leave them there. Yeah, man, I love a cold bed. There's no doubt about it. But I did get to watch some of it, so it was great. Congrats to the Gators. Looks like Alabama rolled. Man, of the amount of SEC teams in the tournament, in the Sweet 16, bad to the bone, man. That's pretty damn cool. But nonetheless, I hope you guys, your team won out there, and they advanced. Look, it gets more exciting. Each game gets more, for any team, more and more exciting. That's what makes it madness. It's one and done. Like, you either win or you go home. It was kind of cool. Earlier in the week, I was explaining it to my Harley, who's my dancer, my young 16-year-old. She's like, why do they call it madness, Dad? And I told her, I was like, think about it. You got to go from 64 to 16 in a weekend. And then you go and, it's winner take all. And she was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I said, I know. It really is kind of cool. You don't think about it till you, break it down like that. But nonetheless, congrats to everybody out there. All right, NFL draft, of course, we'll talk about that. Jags in a great position at number 5. Look, I'll say it again. The first 4 picks are critical, in my opinion, under James Gladstone and Liam Cohen and Tony Baselli. You've got 4 in the first 3 rounds, right? Those all got to be starters, in my opinion. Or at least really big-time contributors, and I mean early. And it sounds from what Gladstone says about not adding more vets because we want the rookies to play, that'll fit right into that kind of calling card. But you better hit on 4 good. I don't care if they're superstars. I do if the number 1 pick is. But just solid. You can count on them. They play the game the right way. They don't make mistakes, and they're there every single Sunday battling their ass off. And I think, to me, that's good. If you, beyond that, and there's no, look, 4th round's not slouch. I'm not saying that, but those first 3 rounds are critical, in my opinion. You got to have football players in those first 3 rounds. The others, you take flyers on, right? The kid at Florida who did it 36 times on the bench press. What are you weighing at, 424? At 7th round, I would.
Dez.
You know what I mean?
Dez, yeah.
I mean, look, he you don't want him to do that much anyway if you're going to utilize him. You want him to sit on that nose, stay low to the ground. Don't let him push you around. Pretty simple stuff for a guy that's that big. Showed he's got some strength, so that means he can press people off. Wide grip. It's funny. We're talking about Josh, is it Williams, the Ohio State tackle, Josh Simmons, who's coming off the ACL. He looks like an absolute beast. Some say if he didn't have his knee injury, he'd be the top tackle coming out. And he was doing reps I think he did it 33 times. And I made a comment like he was doing them close grip. And when you do bench close grip and you have long arms, you have longer to go. And people were saying, well, he didn't lock out. Well, listen, in those tests, you don't have to necessarily lock out. You can't be like this. This doesn't count. But if you show that you're 3/4 of the way through, you've got the rep. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they're not going to sit there like, oh, you got to lock it. You got to get close to locking out, in those tests. But anyway, but my point is, and then you see the big dog, he's way out here. So he has less further to go. It's still impressive, don't get me wrong, but it's different. It's totally different. I remember I said on Twitter, I'm like, Tony Brackens, he's a rookie, right? So I'm a gym rat, right? And I'm not super duper strong, especially in the bench, but I'm pretty strong overall. But I'm not like one of the top, benchers on the team by far. Certainly Brackens in there. I think he's a rookie or second year. And he's like, yo, T-Mac, will you spot me? I said, yeah, no problem. And I want to see what he can do. Like, anyway, he's got 385 on, 3 plates, 25 and a 10, right? And he's like, yeah, just watch me. And I was like, and Tony was kind of a little prankster, so he didn't know when he was being like real or just goofing around. And I was like, you want me to lift it off for you? He's like, no, I got it. He's like, I have no idea how many I'm going to do. It's going to be really heavy. So anyway, he's a big guy, 6'4", really long arms. He goes close grip, really close. And I'll never forget, he goes, 10 times like it was nothing and racked it and got up and turned around and looked at me and just smiled. And I was like, that shit ain't fair, buddy. That is not fair, and walked away. But you had guys like that. They were just super ridiculously strong. Now, look, there were guys that weren't strong in the weight room that were really strong on the field. There were guys that were really strong in the weight room that weren't really strong in the field. You'd be like, where'd all that strength go? You know what I mean? So it doesn't always mean, just because you're strong that you're going to be a better football player. Or that does help in my opinion. But there's different kinds of strength on the field. And there's different kinds of strengths, right? You get that tendon strength, that grip strength, like if you've been working on the farm or something like that. I had a roommate in college who was like that. He couldn't lift for anything in the weight room. But you couldn't get him off you when he tried to block you. His grip was so strong. You couldn't get him off you. His legs were strong. So it all varies. But I see where we're going to get into about drafting Mason Graham at number 5. He did it 24 times. Kenneth Grant did it less than 22 times. I don't always get it if it's real low. You remember, you probably don't remember. Who was the linebacker? Keith McCants. Tampa still drafted him like number 7. He did it like 8 times. And you're like, 8 times? What have you been doing? You're not even going to the weight room?
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but Some of it matters, some of it doesn't. But those 4 picks, man, they got to be critical. And I look, I know we're all looking forward to the first pick, and I will too. And I'll be excited about it. And then everyone's going to evaluate it. But the real evaluation to me is after. You don't have to wait till after the draft because to me, look, you 5th, 6th, 7th round, that's gravy. If you get guys that end up being ball players for you, that's great from your scouting department because they brought them to you, right? They've done a great job finding them, free agents, what have you. I love them all. I love them all, right? But that's kind of like you don't know what you're going to get. You may get a 7th rounder that starts for you all year long.
It's more of a numbers game once you get around 4. Once you're like 4 through 7,
more projects,
just
more flyers.
With trades and stuff, it normally doesn't work out this cleanly, but just for the sake of argument, say 4 through 7, you just pick once per round, you have 4 picks.
Yeah.
Realistically, it'd be really nice if one of those guys could be a starter.
Yep.
One guy could be someone who really contributes, and the other 2 probably won't end up doing maybe some special teams, and that's probably about it.
I see. To me, because you know why they go in the first round? Yeah, they're players, but because their measurables are insane. Right?
Yeah,
yeah. The reason you get knocked down is you don't run a good 40, your arm length. It was funny what the tackle from LSU, Campbell, what he said about the arm length. He measured over 33 at the pro day. I guess at the combine he was under. He's like, does it really mean?
Right.
Does it mean what does it mean? You know
right,
what I mean?
Right.
But it does. It factors in, right? You run a bad 40, they'll sit there and be like, no, I can't take him that high, there's no way.
To me, it's
that
like
means he can't run it as fast on the NFL level. But then you get guys who run a 4.6 on the track, and you never catch them from behind on the field.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Unless you got a Darryl Green chasing, you know what I mean? But that's a rarity. But how does that happen? Guy runs a 4.7, but nobody ever catches him from 50 yards out. Maybe 80 yards out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but that's what happened. So to me, 2nd and 3rd rounders, and even some 4, those are ball players. They know how to play football.
Right.
And they're there because of how they play football, not necessarily because they're a ridiculously freak athlete. That may be part of it. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying they're not great athletes because they are. But those to me are the ball that these guys can play football. The first rounders can too. But there might be some issues that get in the way, a little diva stuff, you know what I mean, or whatever. Something may get in the way of that, or maybe they're just overrated because of their measurables. They got drafted high because, how do you miss on this guy? He's 6'7", he's 2, whatever. He runs
Anthony Richardson.
Matt Jones, how do you miss on him? He's 4.37 at 6'6". Of course he's going to be a great wide receiver. Why wouldn't he be? Because he never went over the middle ever. He took a hit until he did, and then it was over.
To me, it's like...
Thanks, Steve. Morning.
To me, it's like your film and your production is like how good that was dictates your floor.
Yep.
Or doesn't dictate your floor, but is indicative of what your floor would potentially be.
As far as the draft is concerned,
yes,
right?
Correct.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's not a perfect thing, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then measurables dictate what your ceiling could potentially be.
Right.
And if you're a 1st rounder versus a 3rd rounder versus a 5th rounder, what your ratio looks like within that, to me, is kind of how you should evaluate.
Right.
Okay, I really like the tape. I really like the production, so I'm pretty confident I'm going to at least get a pretty serviceable football player here. And measurables are sky high, so he could be this dude. We could be talking all pro because of how athletic he is or whatever. Now I've got a 1st-round pick. I've got a guy similar production, not quite the same measurables though, like maybe a little slower, maybe a little less reps on the bench press.
Yep.
That may be a 2nd-round guy. That may be a 3rd-round guy.
Right.
Or these measurables are crazy. Production wasn't quite there.
Right.
Maybe a 3rd.
But they take flyers on those guys early sometimes too.
And
miss.
This was why, Tommy, I always had issues with the way Trent Baalke drafted.
Yeah.
Because I understand measurables. They matter.
They
you should care.
Yeah. To a certain degree.
I felt like he cared about them too much.
Absolutely. The arm length was ridiculous.
And I felt like he fell in love far too often with measurables, with what someone could be versus what someone is.
Correct. But you are projecting what they will be in the NFL.
Of course you are.
And those measurables do make you go, okay, this kid can run. He's strong. He's flexible. He changes direction great. I can make him into a football player. But here's the thing. Not everybody has the instincts to be a football player. Like you play middle linebacker, you got to be instinctive. You
Yeah.
got to know where the ball is. It ain't how fast. I mean, yeah, that all helps, gets you to the ball, strength, speed, quickness, changing direction, staying low, being all do all that stuff. But you got to be instinctive. Like you got to have a natural instinct for finding the football. You do on if you're playing safety, right? Corners, yeah, you got to have all them, but you got a natural instinct on how to cover.
Yeah.
There's some guys are just born with it. They've been taught the technique early in life, and it's just stayed with them forever. You know what I mean? So that's what makes the draft really not a crapshoot, but somewhat of a crapshoot. You're hoping because here's the reality: you don't know till they get in. You really don't know till they get into your system, to your locker room, onto the field, into games. You don't know the outside life, the social life. You know, you don't know until they get into your organization. And you hope you've done enough homework and you've mitigated risk and you've educated guests till your brains are fried to pick the right guys to not only be great on the football field, but represent your organization the way you want them represented. It's not easy. It's very hard. It's very hard, but that's their job, and we expect them to do it well and come up with some great picks. So I'm not this whole. I keep hearing this rebuilding crap. There's no rebuilding. That's not what we were told. That's not what we were told. This 4-win team's not a 4-win team. Yet you gutted the team. Whatever. I don't care as long as it works, man. I could really look how you do it. Does not matter to me. All that matters to me is what is the end result, right? Well, what's your record going to be? What kind of team are you going to be? You know, what kind of guys you got on that team. So it is exciting, but
Tommy,
you got to hope you can hit on them.
Let me ask you a question because while we're on this topic still, like just more from a more like macro perspective on it. If you were a GM, how would you kind of think you would tend to lean? Do you think you would go more production tape or more? It has to be a combination, of course.
Yeah,
but I feel like
I'm not
every GM,
a big fan of a project. I like production.
I like production
with upside
too.
though.
Correct.
They got more to go.
I like production too.
Yeah.
I don't want and yes, there has to be obviously the proper ceiling there. I'm not taking a dude that was in college for 5 years. That's a college player. I'm not taking that.
Yep.
But I
take the kid out of Texas A&M. Sorry to cut you off. Sherman, what's his name? He's an outside back edge rusher, or maybe D lineman. Stud. Shamar Sanders. Sanders.
Stewart.
What?
Shamar Stewart.
Shamar Stewart.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
Shamar
yeah.
Stewart. Like physical freak of nature, athletically. Like you're like, holy cow. He had 3.5 sacks or 4.5 sacks. It was a 3-year starter. And you're like, okay, SEC's tough. So it's not like he's going against, somebody inferior all week, every week. He's got some tough competition, but that's not production. So to me, I'd have to watch the tape to really, I'm just looking from that. I've never watched the tape on the kid. But for me, I'd have to watch the tape. But I wouldn't sit there and be like, oh, I can make him into something. I'd rather see the kid that, may not be that freak, but freak enough. Look, here's the deal with football, in my opinion. You don't have to be the fastest, but you got to be fast enough.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the strongest, but you got to be strong enough. You got to be quick enough. You got to be smart enough. You got to be tough enough. You don't have to be the greatest in all of that to be a good football player. So to answer, I'm looking at what kind of, first of all, I'm looking at what kind of dude he is. If I'm in a bar and I got some problems, are you coming to save my ass because you're a tough dude? That would matter to me. I know that's a little Neanderthalish, but that means you're ready to protect your friends and help out.
To the point you just made, though, yes, that does matter.
Yeah.
But if he runs a 5.2 and he's a wide receiver, I can't have him.
It's hard. You know what? I might give him a tryout, but I'm not drafting him.
If he runs north of a 5.
I know. But the kid from Miami who ran a 4.83.
Restrepo's a good player, man.
Right.
He's really good.
You know what? He's a great example. What do you do with that? Now, you're not going to take him high because maybe he doesn't, but you might sit there and every other team sitting there going, 4th round, 5th round, whatever it is, and you're sitting there going, wait a minute, let's watch the tape. That kid and I remember why he stood out every time I watched him.
He's really good.
He is. He knows how to run routes. He can catch everything. He's quick enough. Is he a number one? No. Is he a slot? Are you kidding me? That kid's going to be an unbelievable slot receiver in the NFL.
He ate Florida alive.
He's unbelievable. I watch him
He
a bunch.
ate him alive.
I shouldn't say a bunch. When I watch Miami, he made a ton of plays.
In first, it wasn't a BS excuse. He genuinely did tweak his hamstring.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody out there?
I didn't hear that. While he ran it.
No, before
he
he ran
shouldn't have run it.
I agree, but he didn't.
Coughlin made me run mine my junior year, and I had a bad hammy. I had a bad foot. I should have pulled up. I literally, to this day, because it gave me a terrible time. I ran like a 5.1. I could barely run. Not that I was blazing fast, but I would have run like maybe a 4.85, something like that.
Yeah.
My junior year, going into my 5th year. And I ran a terrible, terrible time. And to this day, I'm like, you should have just pulled up. And I'm not that kind of guy, but you look back, you're like, yeah, like, because I felt it the whole way down. My left hammy and my right foot. I looked like Donald Duck trying to sprint. It was awful, but I should have. And you know what? Sometimes you got to look out for you. I didn't, I wasn't that kind of person. I wasn't my make. I'm like, nah, screw it. I'll show him. And I probably hurt myself a little bit.
Well, the 40 is one of those things where, like, if you can't run it at your very, very, very best,
yep,
then it looks like you're slow.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, versus if you're a really good player at a wide receiver,
yep,
but you're kind of banged up, but you play at 85, like Brian Thomas Jr. 85% is a really, really good wide receiver.
Absolutely.
Right? But if you ran a 40 when he's at 85%, you'd be like, damn, he's slow.
Yeah, you ran a 4.55.
Right, exactly.
Instead of a 4.3 something, right.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I watched a lot of Miami as well.
Yeah.
Xavier Restrepo can play.
Yes,
he's really good.
So that, maybe not second round, maybe. Depends if you want to take a risk. But 3rd to 5th, someone's going to go after him. I would.
Can I have Parker Washington on one side in the slot and Restrepo on another, cooking linebackers, giving them problems, and then can also have Brenton Strange down the middle of the field.
Yep.
And then
maybe
BTJ.
Gabe Davis gives you something.
Yeah, then Gabe Davis getting mental reps on the sidelines.
Maybe he gives you something. But yeah, no, that guy. Look, if I would have run a faster 40 time, I might have come out my 4th year. I had a great year my first year under Coughlin. We were 4-7, but I finished 7th in the nation in tackles. I had 100 solos, 65 assists. I had 11.5 tackles for loss. I had 3.5 sacks. I didn't have any picks. But if I ran a 4.6 or 4.5, I'd probably been a 2nd or 3rd rounder. But I didn't, and I couldn't. My father, God rest his soul, we'd watch, the VHS tapes, and that back get around the corner, and I'm going like trying to chase. He's like, just fall down. He was kidding. He's like, you just look really slow when the guy's beating you. He's already beating you to the corner, and you're trying to chase him. Like, just trip and fall. But so it's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because those measurables and how can you play? I could totally play. There was no doubt in my mind that I could play in the National Football League. Especially when I went to camp and I got cut by the Saints. I played enough football, and even in the games, where I felt like, no, I could play. I really could do it. I really felt that. I didn't feel like I was inferior. Now, when I first got out there, it's like, oh, my gosh, these linemen. The New Orleans Saints whole linemen, I can't remember all their names, but they were gigantic. Their guards' asses, I'm not kidding, were like the size of, I don't know what, a hippopotamus or something. And they were quick, and they were strong.
Some double wides back there.
Oh, double wide trailing coming after you, man. They were tough, but you adapt to it. You figure it out. You take different. You gotta be able to adapt, and that goes for even the great athletes out there. You gotta adapt your game. Does it adapt to the NFL? College is college is great, but college is different. It's not the same caliber of athlete player week in and week out. Now, not everybody's phenomenal players. We know this. They can get blocked. You can move them out. But that's what it comes down to. So hopefully we listen, man. We gotta hit on this draft for big time.
I saw our friend here at the radio station, Denny Thompson, doing his podcast with Pastor Joby.
Yeah.
They do the podcast with school, and they had Brock Purdy on.
Nice.
Last episode.
He's in town working out with him on occasion?
Yeah, I think so. But Brock brought something really interesting because he's obviously not a measurables guy, right? Didn't have any of that. He was Mr. Irrelevant for a reason and comes in, whatever. And he was talking about one of his coaches in Santa Fran, it was the QB's coach when he first got in, or whoever it was talking about, they were like, Brock, you got to realize, in this league, the third stringers are really good, really good. Could be talented enough to be starters good.
Yep.
He said where you separate yourself in the NFL is who's consistent and who's not.
That's right.
Who lets a bad play beat him twice, who comes back the next play and wins the rep.
That's right.
And it was interesting to hear because it's like there are so many guys that are just blessed with so much God-given ability they get a chance in the league,
right?
But they're just not consistent in that way, and that kills them.
You made a great point. Well, you're coming up with great points on a Friday, brother. Who'd they draft in the first round that same year they drafted him last in the entire draft?
Yeah, Trey Lance. Yep.
Think about that. Why'd they grab Trey Lance? Because he had a monster arm, very
all the ability
athletic,
in the world. Yeah,
thought we could turn him into something. Where's he? Dallas? And Purdy comes in. He's like, man, I can throw the ball. You got to have the arm, though. You got to have a decent arm.
Well, but I think
you can't have this whole – the thing about Sanders, I was saying on Tuesday that worries me, this whole, he anticipates really well. That doesn't do it for me in the NFL. Does he got to rock it in enough tight – can he get it in there in a tight window? Not based off timing sometimes, but based off velocity. Can you get it there? Can't get it there, and it hangs. Those DBs, those windows close so fast. Well, it brings me into talk about Trevor coming into 2025. This is a massive year for Trevor. The next 3 years, look, I'm not even talking about he's set financially, so forget about the money. I'm talking about as a player in the National Football League. This is a big year. This is year number 5. Year number 5. And you can give every excuse in the book, and you have. A lot of you have. Not all of you have, but a lot of you have. And I get it. You love him. I love him, too. I mean, he's one of ours. I want him to do great. He does have great tools physically. There's no doubt. He is tough. Those are all the things that I love. But what did we just mention? Consistency. He's been consistently inconsistent. He'll have great games, then he'll have terrible games. He'll have a great throw, then he'll have 3 bad ones. So that consistency, this is it. No, it's not it. We're not moving on from him. But for him, what he wants to be as a player, and I truly hope that he wants to be like the greatest quarterback that we've ever had. That leads us to not just talking it, but really doing it. And I never got it. I was thinking about this before because there were rumblings the first 3 or 4 years that Trevor wasn't like putting in extra work, like wasn't coming in on Tuesdays. And I know Kirk Cousins did the same thing, but he wasn't putting in that extra time to the studying and whatnot. You kept hearing that. Now, with a married and a baby, maybe he does. Maybe it does change him, to where he's like, man, if I want to be the next great QB, and he's not. I know a lot of people, you call him top 5, top 5, you're out of your mind. He's not. He's got the tools to be, but he hasn't shown that at all. Potential eventually. I mean, when do we stop talking about potential? I know he's only 24, 25 years old, so he's still young. He can turn it around. This is where Liam Cohen comes in and his staff. I mean, but let's be honest. When Doug Peterson came in, he had 4 other, including him, 3 plus him, were all quarterback coaches or quarterbacks to help Trevor develop. He had a great year in 2022. Had a great half year, 2023. And then from then, it hasn't been great. Not consistently at all. But this is a big year for him. And I do hope those rumblings go away, that he is that worker. Because quarterbacks, they got to work harder than the rest. And if they're not, the team will follow. But he doesn't do it for that. I'm not saying Trevor, I'm saying the quarterback doesn't do it. You do it so you're ultimately prepared. That is the one position you have to be ridiculously prepared for. And like what I said before in the past, I hear what Baker says about Liam, the pre-snap reads, they're huge because you'll know where to go. At least have an idea where to. And maybe Doug, in Trevor's defense, maybe Doug didn't do that well enough, which shocks me. A quarterback wouldn't do that, but whatever. But maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't do that enough. Maybe he didn't hone that in enough. I know everyone, the culture. Well, you know what? Great players rise above the culture and still play great. Is that fair? They have their own culture. I don't need I don't know how you're going to tell. I am the coach. Like for me, I know what it takes. I knew and I know what it takes to be successful in the NFL, right? And I wasn't no star player. I was I was one of those grunts that I like to call a role player. But every team needs role players, right? But I didn't need Coughlin bearing down on me. I already knew. My upbringing gave me that. I mean, my dad made sure that I kept my head on straight all throughout my adolescence and teenage years. Never let me get a big head. Ever, not physically. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get accolades, you get all this stuff, and he'd be like, that's great. But you haven't done anything really in the whole scheme of things yet, Tommy. I think you can, but yada, yada, yada. So hopefully that's what this new culture is going to be. But great players rise. They make great plays regardless. I mean, Trayvon Walker had a great year. They had a crappy culture, but he had a great year, right? Very good to great year. Brian Thomas Jr., he rose above the culture. Culture didn't bother him none.
I hear what you're saying, but I don't think it's realistic to expect the entire team to do that and be a great team like 53 deep.
Well, the young guys, you didn't have enough leadership for the young guys to follow. Yeah. That's the problem. And
I think that starts with roster management. That starts with coaching.
Absolutely. It starts with the message from the coach.
I do agree with you. I mean, you can point to a lot of guys across the league. Like Jamar Chase could be on the worst team in the NFL with the worst quarterback. He's still right, correct. And I think Brian Thomas Jr. is entering a category.
He showed that.
Right.
Two different quarterbacks. He's still balled out.
And I think there's also guys throughout the team that they may be less talented and have a lower ceiling. But even if the culture around them may not be great, they're still going to show up and ball to the best of their ability. Yep. I do agree with you to an extent there, but I don't know that there's really any team in the NFL that's going to get that 53 deep if they don't have the right leadership in the locker room, if they don't have the right coaching leadership. I think you'll get some, but you won't get all.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So,
what kind of leaders, Trevor, do you think?
I don't know.
I mean, he's one of the leaders. Did he not lead?
Listen,
for the record, whatever the promo is going to show you, I don't care what it shows. But I like Trevor a lot. I really want him to work out. I think he's got he's got everything. I worry about his mental game a little bit, just seeing things, recognizing things, understanding things. But maybe these coaches can get it out of him, and he can hone it all together. He's got the arm. He's got the hot size. He's tough as nails. He's a competitor. There's no doubt he can whip it a mile. He makes good, tough throws. There's no doubt he's made ridiculously great throws. And there's been a bunch of I get that. There's been drops on every damn team. Even with Mahomes, they drop a lot of his touchdowns and balls. Trust me. But he's got to take that next step.
I think
when I hear rumblings off the from people that I really trust, I'm like, damn, I hope that changes, because you got to work extra, man. Especially today. You don't have enough time out there. The CBA doesn't allow you to spend all day out there or in the facility. You got to eventually go home. You got to take that thing with you, So, anyway, I hope that's what Liam, and company are going to do. And I think they will. I think that's certain. They got a lot to prove. You think about one thing I do like about the younger and they're hungry to prove. And there's something about being hungry to prove yourself in whatever you're doing out there, right? You may have your people that may not believe in you or question you or wonder what the hell you're doing. You stick to your guns. You know what I'm saying? I'm not just talking about football. I'm talking about in life. If you're young, you're hungry to prove yourself, man, that's a powerful. As long as your head's not in the clouds, you're level-headed, but you're hungry to prove yourself, you can do anything. And this coaching staff can turn this team around. But they got to do it. And I got to run to the radio show. How about that?
Yes, sir.
Right into Jaguars today with Mike Dempsey and Fat Tony and Dylan Denmark from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. You can catch us on the radio dial at 92.5 FM or online at 1010XL.com or the app as well. All right, have a great weekend. Come see us tomorrow night if you're in town. We're at the local in Neptune Beach. The Dad Bods will take the stage at 7 p.m. Hope to see you there. Have a great day, everybody. Until next time, stay safe and stay cool. We'll see you right here on Catching Up with Tommy Mack. Peace, everybody.